Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Giants. Let's recap the last 2 days of practice because from now through the rest of the week, there are no more practices that are open to the public. There's only one more practice that's open to the public. That is next week, and it's Giants Jets. So that's going to be a fun one. I will be there, so I'll be recapping that. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about the last 2 days of practice, and then this week, we're talking preseason because the Giants play a game on Saturday against the Bills. So that's very exciting. Let's start with some injury updates because there were players all over the place today. So let's start with this. We got semi-good news on Cam Scatterbo. He had an MRI and that came back clear. So that's good. The bad news is he's still not really back at practice. He's not in team drills or anything like that. Rushawn Baker, who was dealing with some sort of knee injury yesterday, was also on the side during practice. Jordan Riley, we didn't see. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles and Ty Summers, all not in team drills or anything like that. And there's no update from Dable. We don't know what's going on there. Then these were other players that were on the side today. So Darius Slayton, Bo Collins, Thomas Fidone, who has a concussion, Chauncey Golston, Cordell Flott, and Corey Black. Corey Black is dealing with a groin injury. Darius Slayton, Bo Collins, and Cordell Flott, no update on the injuries. Have no idea what that's about. They were on the side doing their own thing. But Darius Slayton, again, I saw after practice today, and he is like walking and seems okay. So I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully he's healthy and good to go. Offensive lineman Greg Van Roten was back from paternity. Him and his wife had a baby. They had a daughter, so he was back at practice today. Elijah Chapman and DJ Davidson were also back at practice today. So not a ton of notes on those guys, but let's go ahead and talk about some of the offensive highlights. So with Greg Van Roten being back at practice today, we saw a lot less of Evan Neal at the starting right guard position. GVR was right back to it, and they seem to do well today. Now, they weren't in full pads today. Still kind of an intense practice, but not as intense as the days when they're in the full pads. So I saw some good things and some bad things. So with Darius Slayton on the side, Jalen Hyatt was in there with the ones. He had a relatively good day. He caught a touchdown from Russell Wilson. So he had a nice day. Wan'Dale Robinson, not great. He had a drop, and then one of the passes that was supposed to be for him ended up getting picked off by Javon Holland. Malik Neighbors did Malik Neighbors type of things. He seems to always have a good day. He made an acrobatic catch where he ended up on the ground, and there was a collective, and then he got back up and was fine. So that's good news. So he had a really nice day. Today, they were focused a lot on passing drills, not a lot of run drills. So that's why we saw some of the wide receivers more involved. I saw Theo Johnson involved, a lot to Greg Dulcich. That was more of like the 7-on-7s, but definitely some tight ends getting involved there. And let's see, anything else? I think that's really it from the ones. From the twos, Jackson Dart, I will say this, he seems like he's getting better at processing his reads. He seems to get through them a little bit more quickly. Him and Montrell Washington have developed an incredible connection. Montrell Washington made a beautiful one-handed catch today, and he's caught some really nice balls from Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart has thrown him some nice passes. But I would say the last two practices, Dart has kind of been up and down. He also has been holding on to the ball a little bit too long. Now, Abdul Carter has been in with the twos a lot, so I'm sure that has something to do with it, getting all of that pressure that they are able to get on Jackson Dart. But I think this is just a reminder that there's a reason why he's not the starting quarterback. There's a reason why so many people are saying that he needs to take the year off and learn from Russell Wilson. And I think that's a good reminder. I think it's a good reminder no matter what he does in preseason, that ultimately Russell Wilson has been the standout quarterback at practice. Now, Wilson has not had a perfect day every day. He's had some missed throws. He's had some interceptions and things like that. But ultimately, he is the best quarterback out of this group to be the starting quarterback, to run an efficient offense, and to score the most amount of points and hopefully win us games. So, obviously, I know we're all excited about Jackson Dart. I know we want to see him do some good things, and we're excited to see him in preseason, but ultimately he's not the best man for the job, not right now. And I don't think that in 2 or 3 short games of preseason, that means that he's going to be ready to beat out Russell Wilson. So, he still has some ways to go and things to learn, although he's had some really nice practices, some beautiful throws. He's definitely improving. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think he's improving to the point where if, God forbid, Russell Wilson goes down, we should be seeing him as the starting quarterback in helping us win games, because I just don't think he's there yet. So, I would say Montreal Washington has stuck out of the wide receivers. Dalen Cambry has done a nice job as well, and so has Beau Collins. But Beau Collins, unfortunately, has been on the side the last couple days. So, when it gets closer to the preseason game on Saturday, we're going to talk more about players to watch. But Montreal Washington, number 80, is absolutely one of them. So let's go ahead and talk about the defense now, because I think those are really like the biggest highlights from the offense. From the defense, I know we talked about this a lot, but there is just so much good to say about Abdul Carter that I hope that never ends, because he's really fun to watch. And someone like Brian Burns, I know we talk so much about Abdul Carter, but we also have to talk about Brian Burns, because him and Kayvon Thibodeau are going to benefit a lot by having someone like Abdul Carter on the field. And I think that Kayvon is going to benefit the most, because one thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure you guys have noticed as well, is that towards the end of games, Kayvon Thibodeau is fried. He's exhausted. He's out of energy. He's out of oxygen. There's a lot of times where I've seen him on the sideline with the oxygen mask on, and it just seems like he's just beat. So, having someone like Abdul Carter, where Kayvon's not going to have to play 100% of the snaps every time, is going to be really helpful for him. I think we are still going to see a ton of Brian Burns, which I hope to see. I think Burns is also going to benefit from having a guy like Abdul Carter. And Burns has done a really consistent job of getting good pressure throughout this entire camp so far, and I think that's something that we're going to continue to see. So I have no worries about those three edge rushers. I think they're all going to be great. I think Kayvon taking up wrestling is hopefully going to help him a lot, and I really hope that we see that translate. A highlight today on defense was Javon Holland, who intercepted Russell Wilson and ended up running it back for a touchdown. Now, in a real game, he probably would have gotten tackled at some point, because it's camp, they're not tackling, etc. But, he's a guy, him and Tyler Nubin have done a really nice job throughout this camp so far. And I think Nubin has been one of those players who has been really steadily improving day after day. And he's a guy that I think is going to have a really great year this year. So he's a young guy to be excited about, and especially learning under someone like Holland, who's a vet, has a lot of experience in this league, I think is going to be really helpful for him. And I want to talk about Bobby O for a second, because he did an interview where he was talking about Shane Bowen and basically just said that they didn't really hit it off the bat like him and Wink Martindale did. And, we saw Bobby O in year one with the Giants under Wink Martindale excel. Sideline to sideline linebacker, had tackles behind the line, interceptions, PBUs, overall had a really successful first year. And then last year kind of fell off, and we were all like, what is going on here? And he talked about that and basically said that, he felt like he was overcompensating, and that, he didn't necessarily use the word trust, but I think what I got out of it is that he didn't really trust some of the other players on the field to do their job. And he was doing everyone's job, and that's why he wasn't succeeding in the areas that he was supposed to be doing. But he said that ultimately him and Bowen have a really great relationship, that he learned a lot over the last year. And he thinks that Bowen, he called him a schematic master, I believe were the words that he used. So I think that he's done, I think this year is going to be a bounce back year for Bobby O. And, I think it's really interesting to hear him talk like that and put some of the onus on himself and say, listen, part of that's on me. I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing last year. We didn't connect for whatever reason, but it's a new year, a new scheme. We have new players, and I'm going to bounce back. And I have a lot of faith in Bobby O. He's a really good football player, and I expect to see that from him this year. But I know there really hasn't been a lot of talk about the linebackers at camp. It's just because they're not tackling and they're not doing that type of stuff. So, Bobby O has had a couple PBUs and things like that. It's just not as exciting, I guess, as the interceptions and the sacks from Abdul Carter and Burns and Dexter and things like that. So I expect a big year out of Bobby O, and he's a guy that I'm definitely excited about. Darius Muasau is getting a lot of the reps with the twos. He is definitely the number 3 linebacker on this team, in case anyone was interested about that. So Cordell Flott was not practicing today. So this is the 3rd day in a row now that we have seen Tay Banks get basically all of the starting reps at CB2 with the ones. Now, Is that because he's earned it, or is it because Cordell Flott is not on the field? I think we're still going to see that rotation all throughout preseason. But I will say I saw some good things from Banks today. I think the biggest thing that we can all breathe a sigh of relief with Banks is that he's not going to be going against the number one wide receivers. Yes, he's gone against Neighbors a little bit during camp. I think a big part of that has just been like, how does he do against Neighbors? Can he match up? Do we ever trust him to go against a number one wide receiver during the real thing, during the season? Or is this just good practice? I think it's just good practice. Adebo's always going to be on the number one receivers. But I'm starting to have a little faith in Banks. I think we all should. I think he has a new sense of determination, motivation, whatever you want to call it. But I think we're going to see a bounce back year from him. And I think a big part of that is that he doesn't have the responsibility of being on the number one wide receiver. He's had some nice pass breakup in camp. He still does not turn his head around. I hope that improves throughout this season. I will not get my hopes up, but you never know. Guys can get better. Let's hope the same for Banks. Is there anything else I wanted to touch on? The defensive line. So the rotations still have continued a lot between Nacho, Elijah Chapman, Elijah Garcia. Darius Alexander has gotten some good reps with the ones. Who am I missing? There are a lot of defensive linemen. Now, Jordan Riley was back at practice. We've seen a little bit of him. DJ Davidson has been back and forth, not a lot of him. Roy Robertson Harris is a guy that we've seen a lot of. Jeremiah Ledbetter a little bit here and there. I think the biggest question mark, and we're also going to talk about this once preseason starts too, and what to watch for is, what is this run defense really going to look like? And, what does it look like against other teams versus, the Giants? Is our run blocking that good? Is our run defense that bad? Ultimately, I think we're not really going to have any good answers for that until we see the starters play in preseason, which I believe will be week 2. Next up, I want to talk about special teams. I don't have a ton to note here, but a special teamer that I know we're probably all familiar with is Gunnar Olszewski, and he's back with the Giants. He re-signed with them last week. He's been right back into it. He has managed to get some reps with the 2s, 3s, and 4s. I've seen him on special teams. He's done a nice job. Ultimately, I feel like Amir Smith-Marset is winning out that returner role. I don't necessarily think that Gunnar is going to be fully battling him out for that. I just think Smith-Marset is the better of the two of them. I think he's got better speed, better hands, and he also has done a nice job playing in the slot when he's been in with the 1s and the 2s. So that being said, it was good to see Gunnar back at practice, and he made some really beautiful catches from Jameis Winston today. Jameis Winston threw some, corner sidelines and some that he had to make some acrobatic catches to make them. He was looking like Malik Neighbors a little bit out there, but he had some really nice receptions today. And look, ultimately, I don't know that if that's going to be enough to help him make this team, but it was nice to see him back out there. He was a great target for Jameis Winston. And, Jameis Winston has looked pretty good during camp. He's had some really beautiful, accurate throws, and he's had some also not so great throws. So, time will tell as that goes on, but it's been fun to watch Jameis out there. And we'll continue to see what happens with these quarterbacks. But the Giants play a preseason game on Saturday. I'm so excited. Stay tuned. I have a lot more coming your way, and we are going to talk about players to watch and things like that for the rest of this week. So hit the subscribe button for more.